Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. At Portugal Pathways, we support international families in Portugal or relocating to Portugal with golden visa residency by investment programs, tax and estate planning, investment in luxury properties, property searches, to name a few. We also understand that education is a very important aspect for many international families in Portugal. In this webinar, we will shed some light on how to navigate international schools in Portugal, education, and other considerations families might have. I'd just like to introduce my panel today. We're joined by Christine Chamberlain, our operations manager here at Portugal Pathways, Abigail Lewis, executive head of school at St. Peter's International School in Palmela, and Tom Caston, who's principal of Bright International School. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hi, afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Chris.
Hello, thank you so much for having us.
That's great. So maybe, Christine, I can start with you. So when families are relocating to Portugal and are thinking about education, what are the most important factors to think about when choosing an international school?
So thank you, first of all, for having me. I think when it starts with education and looking for the right school for your child, it's really looking at the child itself and understanding what would be the best fit. I think the beauty about Portugal is there's a variety of international schools that international families can choose. And it's really understanding the facilities that each school has, and if it's a good match for the child, looking in more into their academic future aspirations. And also, first of all, when coming to Portugal, it's understanding whereabouts in the country you'd like to be living and which location, and then looking into the international schools that exist around that area, and just going and visiting, having a good feel, and understanding a bit more about the school environment, really just to ensure that your child will be able to integrate and feel comfortable in their new routine and in the new country that they'll be futurely, residing in.
Some interesting points there, Christine, I think. Abigail, is there much to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, of course, location and lifestyle are really important. Where are you going to live? Are you going to be in Lisbon, where there are lots of international schools? Similarly, the Algarve, Porto. If you're living a little bit more rural areas, then it can be perhaps a little bit harder to find an international school. I think you need to think about the budget, not just the tuition fees, but you're going to have trips and extracurricular activities and other things. And I think being realistic about that is important. We have lots of different curricular pathways to choose from. You've got lots of schools offer the Cambridge curriculum, the IB, American, German, French, you name it. So that can be a little bit of a minefield. But think about your long-term plans. Will your child continue their education in Portugal? Might there be another move in the future? I think that can guide you to find a program that might suit you. Language, I think, is another one. Some families choose for full Portuguese immersion, whereas others are looking for a school that is perhaps in their home language. There are lots of schools, that have different home languages that you can study in. And then, the size, the culture of the school. Is it inclusive? Is it well resourced? And practically, is it near you? Are you going to be able to get there? And I'd say, think about lifestyle, think about your long-term plans, where your child's going to feel confident and happy at the most important things, and where you think they're going to thrive.
Thank you very much. Tom, can I have your thoughts on this?
I'll be quick now, because that's you nailed it. I think for me, Christine, what you said too, but it's about the feel. And Abigail, I know that you and I have been to so many schools throughout our careers, and some of them I walk in and they have great reputations, but I just don't get it. And I walk around some schools thinking, I don't see myself here. And this is somebody who's been in the business for 27 years. But then I walk into other schools and think, this just feels amazing. And I think it's that intuitive sense of this feels right, what I'm hearing feels right, this fits my family, this fits my child. And I think go with your gut instinct too. They've got to spend 8 hours a day here, 180 days a year, And so I think there are so many practical considerations, absolutely, but also there's that intuitive sense of this feels good, it feels right, and I don't think you can get away from that.
Thank you very much. I mean, from what I'm taking away from that, that it is the, what feels right for you and for your children, and what are you trying to achieve, I guess, is what we're saying there. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
From your perspective, guys, what helps children really thrive? Because when they join a new school, because we know it can be difficult in a new country, and how do you support students arriving with kind of different backgrounds and experiences, and maybe even different expectations? Tom, maybe we could start with you on this one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think as international schools, that's what we do. In traditional schools that I've worked in historically, there's a very generic intake that come from the prep schools, the local schools, and a very defined group of schools that often feed into secondary schools. Here, we doubled in a year throughout the year in terms of size, and we have a third of our kiddies come from the UK, and the rest come from all around the world. So they're coming from homeschool, they're coming from Montessori, they're coming from traditional English schools. And our job very much is to catch them when they land and to find a way to settle them as quickly as we can. And by providing the right kind of frameworks. What we tend to do is a welcome assessment either before they join or as they join in English and maths. So very quickly we can gauge their levels and put in the right levels of support. The last thing I want to do is plonk a kiddie into a classroom where they just feel utterly out of their depth or bored, either way. So I think having strong systems in place immediately that give them the support with their English that they might need if they're EAL, or if they're behind on their literacy or numeracy, just catch them up. The Cambridge curriculum that we do here in the Algarve is very skills-based year on year, and I think it's very important very quickly that we align them with the rest of their classes as much as we can in those skills. And I think having that system, those structures in place will help them thrive. Hey, they'll have fun in the playground, they'll have fun, I hope, the minute they walk in the door, but I also need them to feel secure and safe in their classes and their learning. So for me, that's a real priority too.
Thanks very much, Tom. Abigail?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Tom. It's kind of our bread and butter. We're used to welcoming families from all around the world, and it's what we do. We help them settle in. We help them feel included. We help them feel supported, and we have a raft of different ways to do that. So absolutely, I think most of us do an assessment before entry so that we can make sure that the child's really placed in the right place. Absolutely, we'll have a buddy system, and we'll be phoning home in the first week and checking in how things are going. So it's what we do. Of course, lots of students start in September, but as Tom said, we have lots of students starting midway through the year. So having really robust programs to help kids settle in is important. I think, from the other point of view, mindset matters, and really speaking positively about the move at home helps. I think younger kids tend to be pretty excited to come in, and it's, maybe easier for them. But, if you've got a 14-year-old who's maybe a bit sad to be leaving friends, then I think the mindset at home can help them come with a positive attitude that, this is an incredible opportunity to expand their world, not kind of leave something behind. And then, just get involved in things, join extracurricular clubs. That really helps get that sense of belonging and sense of community, which helps students, settle and flourish both socially and academically as well.
There we go. Thank you. And Christine, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I think that's a really important point you brought up, Abigail, and it's something I've also seen a lot in many other international schools, is the buddy system, and I think it plays a really important role. And equally, I believe that parents also play a very important role in this case as well, when it comes to helping the child feel supported, not only academically, but emotionally, and having that continuous communication with the staff at school, with the teachers. And I think it will help with the child settling into the new school, into the new country, making new friends. I think these are all important elements to allowing children to feel integrated and finding that new sense of belonging in a new environment. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. I think there were some great answers there. I love the answer that said the most important thing is about them having fun. I think if children have fun at school, that's got to be a good thing, isn't it? That would be my view. So moving onwards, when moving to a new country and looking at education and international schools, there are a lot of things to consider, such as the options available, location, curriculum, track records, languages offered, and more. Much has been covered by our panelists so far. Christine, you've worked very closely on Portugal Pathways' new top 50 international schools and colleges in Portugal index. Maybe it's a good time for you to kind of talk us through a bit about the report and how it helps international families.
Absolutely. Thank you for that brief introduction regarding the index. So the index that we have, it's essentially the top 50 international schools and colleges in the country. And it starts as a starting point for many international families looking to relocate to Portugal and really understand what's the education system like, what already exists here in the country, what are the opportunities and different options they have from the north, from Lisbon all the way to the south, really. So this goes more in depth into the curricula that each school holds, the age ranges, more or less the class sizes as well, the facilities and the different extracurricular activities that their children can get into. So this is something we speak a lot with international families and help guide them not only regarding visa options or wealth management when coming to the country, but this most important aspect regarding the child's education.
Thank you for that, and I think that's interesting. That I do think with people moving to Portugal, it's great to get all your immigration and visa things sorted, but I would think one of the most important things if you're moving with younger children is definitely getting their education. So that must be a big point. So my colleague has just put a link in the chat and on screen to download the report that Christine was talking about. And I would highly recommend that you request a copy of this because it is most informative. Also, if you'd like to have a call with any of our experts or have any questions, we have a link in the chat where you can reach out to us and schedule a discovery call. It's a quick 15-minute call with people just to discuss the situation that you're interested in. And I can't recommend more for you to just spend 15 minutes of your time having a chat with someone to just kind of guide you in the right direction. Okay, so kind of moving on, what do we think parents should know about kind of timelines, assessments, and the overall process of enrolling your children in an international school? How difficult is it? When do we have to think about it? Maybe we can start with you, Abigail.
Yeah, I think it's good to reach out early and be quite exploratory. I know that schools are always happy to talk to parents. So I think reach out. The admissions teams, have loads of advice. So, so talk to them and make the most of that great resource. It's really collaborative. So, if you share what your child likes, what they're interested in, how they like to learn, then I think that really helps you choose a school, and it helps the school kind of, ensure that your child is in the right environment for them, and a safe environment for them. Generally, as Tom and I have already said, we generally our school, schools start in September, like the UK, but we're very used to welcoming families throughout the year. Some schools are more selective, so they might do an assessment to help decide whether your child will go there, but I think most Portuguese schools are inclusive and welcome any children. So just get in touch with the schools, I think, and reach out and speak to them.
Okay, thank you, Abigail. Reaching out is important, I guess. Tom, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, same. We have our admissions policies online as well, so that kind of maps it up quite clearly for parents, and I think lots of schools will have that. We also have our inclusion policy online too, so parents with boys and girls who have certain learning needs can have a look at that to see if there's a provision for them too. As Abigail said, I always want to say yes to lovely kids and lovely families, but I also need to be mindful of the fact that I need them to be able to cope in the curriculum that we offer with the support that we offer. And I think that's really important. So I would always say to parents, do your research, find out about how the school will cater for any boys and girls with learning needs. Lots of schools, particularly down here, have waiting lists too. So Abigail said about starting early. I know up near you, it's a bit more competitive, isn't it, Abigail? There's dozens of you, but down here, down in the sleepy south, it's there are schools with waiting lists, so it's a good idea to as you say, get in there early. But there should be policies online. The admissions team in every school, their job is to be welcoming and to draw you in and to give you all the information you need so you can make a good decision. So it shouldn't be too complicated. I'd hope it wouldn't.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. I mean, the message I'm taking from that loud and clear is start early and do your research, I would think, is kind of where we go to. And it seems to come back to that bit of, there'll be a school that's right for your child somewhere, but make sure you ask the questions. So
I'm being blocked by the download.
Oh, you are being blocked by the download for.
It'd look weird if I sit like this.
I'm sure Johan will be able to sort that out. Christine, a quick question for you. At Portugal Pathways, we support international families relocating to Portugal or already in Portugal. I mean, on the topic of education, children and lifestyle, why do you think we see so many families from the US, Canada, UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, choosing Portugal as a country to raise their family in? I think we also have a slide on this as well that I will put up for you.
Well, I would say that apart from the obvious, the great weather, we do have a great climate here in Portugal with over 300 days of sunshine that people typically say, and I can confirm it's pretty much the case, not just here in the Algarve, but across the country. So we're very privileged in that regard. And I think with the climate, that also allows for many opportunities to have outdoor activities with the family. So that's very attractive. But also it's a very politically stable country. It's safe, it's secure. And I feel that those are many key factors for people looking to relocate here, and also the quality of education. So there are many great points to coming to Portugal. And I would say that those are kind of the key ones that we're realizing why people want to come to this beautiful, safe, as well as friendly country. So, yeah.
Thanks for that, Christine. I think the points you make are very valid, actually. Portugal is a beautiful place to raise children. I know lots of friends and family that have raised people there. Another question I'd like to touch on is the commute and transport to international schools and how accessible are they? Tom, can I start with you on that one?
I mean, I can't speak for around Lisbon, but I mean, the Algarve everywhere seems to only be 20 minutes away, wherever you are. And I used to be principal of school in Cambridge, and it took an hour to get from the edge of town into the middle of town every morning. The Algarve isn't quite like that. So it seems to be 20 minutes to everywhere I go, every time I do a journey. We have a school bus. It's a bit tricky getting buses here. I think the insurance and the bureaucracy required is a bit different. We've had to recently buy our own bus and train up somebody on the staff to do a 30-hour driving course or something quite extensive like that. But there is transport. The roads down here aren't like Lisbon in terms of, I don't remember the last time I got stuck in traffic. It's rare. Christine, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am.
No, absolutely the same. And regardless of the time that you leave during the day, so we're quite lucky and fortunate.
I mean, it is extraordinary. I live up in the mountains about 20 minutes away, and when I say to people, I live in Salier, this lovely Portuguese village in the mountains, they go, "Oh, you live miles away." It's 20 minutes. But here, people are kind of frown at that and say, "Oh gosh, what a long commute." Don't you get tired? And I just think in England that was like.
That's a luxury, isn't it? 20 minutes commute.
I feel like I'm getting 2 hours a day back from not having to commute into the middle of Cambridge, which makes a big difference.
Abigail, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Tom, I couldn't agree more. I was in the Algarve before I was in Lisbon, and I never had any traffic at all. And you're right, you don't think of anything about traveling 20 minutes and you can get kind of probably from one end of the Algarve to the other. So I couldn't agree more. The Algarve is super easy. In Lisbon, there are so many schools. It's pretty easy to find a school that's commutable. There are schools in Porto too, so that works really well. And as Tom said, lots of schools have buses. I have 300 students arriving and leaving by bus, and they come from the north of Lisbon and all the way around my peninsula. So lots of us do have buses to help with that commute for sure. But choose a school I have to tell you that lots of people choose their school before they move, actually. So they tend to choose a school that they really like and then move to the area. I'm not saying that everyone has to do that, but I find that quite a lot of my parents do choose St. Peter's and then look for the area. So obviously it's much busier in Lisbon and you will get traffic. It's not quite the same as the Algarve. It's a little bit more kind of normal life. You know, I lived in London before, so it's not London. But it's kind of, you know, a little bit more rhythm to it. So I say, you know, just think about your family. Think about what matters to you, you know, as you choose that, and try and think about the routines that will work well for you. Yeah, but I think there are quite, you know, unless you're in Alentejo, where it would be harder to find an international school, you know, Algarve, Porto, Lisbon area, I don't think you'd find too much trouble finding somewhere that you can commute to without too much trouble.
And Christine, we welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree here with Tom and Abigail regarding Lisbon and Porto and Braga and the big metropolises, you know, towns in Portugal. The transport is really good. Schools are very accessible. Other areas, there are also, you know, many of the international schools do offer transport that is very common. So I guess when it comes to commutes, it's not much of an issue. And going back to the Algarve, it is pretty much a 20-30 minute commute from place to place, from the city and to the schools. So yeah, it's a big difference if you're coming from New York or London or Singapore. Yeah, I think the work-life balance is also something to think about. There's a very healthy one here, and people typically do live quite close to schools. So, yeah.
And actually, you know, some schools that we have a boarding school, so we have weekly boarders as well as full-time boarders. So, you know, so some of our families do actually live in Lisbon. We're actually 20 minutes from Lisbon, but some of and it can be a bit trafficky, to be honest, over the bridge. So some of them choose to weekly board so that they're here to do all their activities and things and get those done and then go home for the weekend. And that's becoming more popular in Portugal, is boarding schools with weekly boarding, and that can be another option for those older students, perhaps.
Boarding hasn't made it down to the Algarve yet, so.
Well, I'm sure it won't be long. It won't be long until it comes, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a parent of a child who boarded about half a mile up the road because he wanted to spend time doing all the activities and be with his friends, I can promise you that it's generally child-led rather than parent-led boarding.
I think so.
But thank you for those as well. And I can take away I think you can take away the fact that I thought was interesting is that a lot of parents choose the school before they choose where they live. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. So thank you for that. But before we go into our Q&A section of today's webinar, I think there's kind of one more question which leads in from the one we've just spoken about, really. What would we say is the best way for families who are applying from overseas to get a real feel for a school? I mean, do you advise that they fly down for a short trip and get an in-person feel, or do you do virtual tours or a mixture of the two? Maybe we could start with you, Abigail.
I mean, for sure. As Tom said right at the beginning, I think nothing quite beats going into a school, feeling the atmosphere, seeing the students, you know, is it calm in the canteen? Are they smiling and say hello? Are they playing and having fun? Do they look engaged in their learning? And kind of nothing really beats that. But for loads of our families, they can't just fly over. So we try and get them to feel, you know, to feel the school, even if it's remote. So I would say that, you know, we all have virtual tours. If you go on most people's websites, there'll be a virtual tour. I have actually picked up my camera and walked around the school with families who are feeling particularly kind of nervous. And we really want people to feel like they're making an informed choice. So, you know, we don't want someone to feel like they haven't got a choice and they don't know what they're going to do. You know, you'll speak to the admissions team, but it's really important to speak to an academic lead, perhaps a teacher as well. And I'd say maybe reach out to the PTA. Most schools have a parent-teachers association, and talking to parents who are at the school already, I think, can be quite a nice way to kind of get a feel of the school. So yeah, nothing beats in person, but we try our very best to make parents understand the kind of nature of the school, even if they can't visit us.
Thank you. And Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's difficult, you know. Every school has a great website that says great things about how great they are, and I think that, and it's the challenge is to kind of sift and to find a way to kind of get into the cracks. And I think some of the social media is a bit less glossy and a bit more real. You know, if you find a school that's got some regular kind of stories, regular updates, that can give you a bit of a sense too. But I also am hesitant to say, you know, that there are kind of Algarve Facebook groups, but some of them can be quite myopic about in their views of certain schools. So, you know, again, there's lots of information if you look for it. And again, as we've both said, as we've all said, it's about just that kind of, hopefully that sixth sense. And I know that feels like a big reach if you're kind of shifting your kids and expending all this money on an amazingly expensive education. But the challenge for parents is to sift and to find a way through the noise to hear something that you really resonate with. It's not easy, and the best way is always to go, but you know, as Abigail was saying, sometimes it's just not possible.
No, I get that. Christine, have you got some thoughts? I'm sure having compiled the report and worked on that, there's been lots of kind of information around that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, I lost the sound. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes,
you.
we can hear you. So we can hear you, Abigail.
Oh, great. Do you want me? Oh, Chris, I was going to say, I don't think you need
No,
to
that's
say.
fine. No, just making sure. Sorry, it's my fault.
No worries.
But while we're waiting for Christine to come back, why don't we take a few Q&As from the chat? It's been great. Everybody's been joining in. As I say, if we don't get to everybody in our time, we will reach out to you with answers and support in the next 48 hours. And we will be sending out a recording of the webinar to everybody that registered. But as we said, you know, if you want to download the report, you want to talk to anyone, please just get in touch with us and let me know. One of the questions we had in the chat was from Emily, and she was asking, what about state schools in Portugal? How do they compare with international schools? Christine, if you're back with us, will you be able to answer that one for us?
Yes, I'm back, fortunately. Absolutely. So, yeah, I would say the Portuguese education system is quite a solid one. And the main difference with international schools is that it's in Portuguese. So that obviously can be a bit of a challenge if your child is coming to Portugal and might not have the basics of the local language. Needless to say, many of the Portuguese schools are offering classes to teach Portuguese as a foreign language to non-native Portuguese speakers. So that's a massive advantage. And really, it depends on the family's long-term goals in Portugal. I think there are many people who initially go to an international school to develop also the Portuguese language schools and then transition into the local system. It really just depends on each family's needs and how long they are invested in staying in the country.
And Abigail, what would be your thoughts on that one?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, a state school is a wonderful way to really immerse yourself in Portuguese language and Portuguese culture. But of course, you have to choose, is it right for the child, you know, to have that kind of real immersion? Because it's a wonderful thing, but it's not necessarily easy. And as Christine said, you want to look at your future. If you think the family are likely to be staying in Portugal, well, then maybe a state school would be a good choice. But if you're thinking of moving on in a couple of years, or you're thinking about, you know, perhaps, you know, going to a university in the UK or the US or Holland, Netherlands is incredibly kind of popular, then maybe an IB or an A-level school, you know, might make that easier for you. I mean, of course, state schools are free, and I think that's a huge advantage, obviously. I know, and international schools cover, you know, tuition fees, so I think, you know, that is something for families to think about. I think honestly, both pathways are real, genuine value, and I think the choice depends on that language, your child's adaptability, and your future plans and your budget priorities. So I think honestly, the most important thing is to choose an environment where your child feels secure and confident and happy, and as you said, has fun as well.
Tom, what are your views on kind of state v international schools?
I think we have lots of parents that will send their kiddies to the state schools early. While they're young, they pick up the language very quickly, and then they'll come to us mainly for the reasons that Abigail says about getting onto the curriculum that will, A levels, IB. But at least then they're getting that immersive experience and getting kind of fully up to date with the language. I mean, every kiddie here has 3 lessons a week of Portuguese, whether it's first or second language anyway. But you can't beat being in a Portuguese school if you really want to learn it quickly. I think that class sizes will be different inevitably, and I think that the UK state schools have problems with funding. I think that's fair to say. I think that, and I don't know whether that's similar here or not. I don't know enough about the state schools in Portugal, but I think it's, as Abigail says, it's family preference, and it's expensive coming to us.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's worth it.
Yeah, of course.
We have a question from Mark. Mark said, is there a notable difference between international schools in Lisbon, Porto and the Algarve, or is it more about the individual school? Tom, can we start with you on this one?
I have no idea. I'm in a group that has a school in Lisbon. It's an IB school. It's very different to us. I think it must be about the individual school. Abigail, you're best set to answer this because you've been down here.
Yeah, I've been head in the Algarve as well as here, and I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. Honestly, it's about the individual school.
Yeah.
I think you want to look at the ethos. Of course, we've talked about curriculum and language. Yeah. We've looked at the experience of the teaching team. How new students settle in, perhaps the universities that students go on to. I think honestly, it's more about the individual school than it is about the place, I think.
Yeah. And some are owned by groups and some aren't. We're owned by a Portuguese family. There are 3 of us in our group. There are other schools that are part of companies that have 30, 40, 100 schools. And again, ethos-wise, they're all very different too.
Yeah, you can see that we've got 121 schools in ours. I think it's in my red thing in the corner, and we're all entirely different, and we're designed to be uniquely different. Yeah. But we are able to draw on expertise, with each other, and I guess we've got the kind of idea that it's financially incredibly stable. But I think it's the feel of the school that is perhaps the most important thing, I think, for parents often.
And Christian, was there anything in the report or anything you'd like to add to those?
No, exactly. This is one I agree on. I mean, when it comes to choosing a school for your child, whether it's in the Algarve, in Porto, or in Lisbon, or any other part of the country, essentially it's the feel for the school, and nothing beats an in-person visit to the school, talking with the principal, talking with the teachers, engaging with the staff and getting that true feel of what it's like to be there on a day-to-day basis, and what it will be like, for your child. Do they feel safe? Do they feel comfortable to express themselves? And does it have the facilities that, suit their needs, their activities, whether it's, additional learning support or, language support, or, if they're into swimming, does the school have a swimming pool or a swimming pool nearby? So it's really just getting a feel for the school and, exploring it and understanding if it, is best equipped for your children.
Okay, thank you. I think I find that really interesting, actually, because I do think, every school's individual, and it probably goes back to that part we say about, getting to know as much as you can. So I'd encourage people to do that. On a interesting subject, we've got a question here from David, who asked about, do most international schools offer any kind of learning support for children with special educational needs? Maybe Tom, could you take that one?
Yeah. Yes, I hope so. So we've got a full-time education psychologist. We have a SENCO, a special educational needs coordinator. We have a full-time EAL coordinator. So we have all the range of support in place, and we have 3 other teachers that do one-to-ones. And We have to, you know, and that's not for the bottom end. It's for every single kiddie on the whole learning spectrum, and it's important, you know, whether or not your son or daughter necessarily needs it when they join. You never know, life changes. They might need more support throughout their time in a school over 5-10 years. And I think when you're selecting a school, it's really critical that you're happy with the support that's in place for any learning needs or anyone falling behind. They might get ill and miss a couple of terms. What's the school going to do then? Have they got capacity to support them, or are you going to find yourself paying for a tutor? I think that's a really great question. I think parents need to really zero in on that in a big way. Abby, would you agree?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think most of us do have robust learning support systems in place, of course. Yeah. It's incredibly important that we have that. And I think you have to ask the right questions, really. You know, how does learning support department work for you? Do you have specialist staff? I mean, in Portugal, we tend to have educational psychologists in school. Yeah. They tend to be, you know, psychologists rather than, you know, special educational needs. So just watch out for that language. If they say they have psychologists, it's about that. You know, how is it delivered? Do they have withdrawal groups? You know, do you have differentiation, one-to-one intervention? And how do the school communities and families kind of measure progress? So how often do we hear about our child's progress? So I think asking those questions is really, really important, because the most important thing as well, I think, is honesty. You know, we do CAT4 tests, so cognitive ability tests, when children come, and that is really just about making sure, like Tom said earlier, we're placing students in the right place for them to be successful, and we can already put intervention in place to support them. You know, whether that be actually educational, but sometimes, you know, they need a bit of kind of counselling when they come to help them settle in. So the more we know about your child, the more we can put in place before they come, the smoother the transition, the happier they are. So collaboration, I think, between family and school, you know, we're all a partnership, is really important, so that they settle constantly and make great progress and are happy.
It's interesting. I didn't understand the difference between an education psychologist, you know, and so when I joined, we had a full-time ed psych, and actually I appointed a Senko too, because they are different, and it was easy. I couldn't work out in my mind how it worked. It was very different to the UK. But to have, it's lovely that we have them. Yeah,
we similarly have both as well. I mean, we're big. We have 1,600 students, and we have a big half our school follow the Portuguese Ministry approved education in Portuguese. So we have 4 psychologists for them, and we have Senko and special educational needs that focus on the Cambridge and the IB curriculum. So, you know, I think we all put things in place, but I'm sure some schools do it better than others. And so I do think it should be part of that kind of detailed questions that you ask when you're on that call, or if you're in face-to-face.
Thank you for that. And as a father of a child who has dyslexia, I can highly recommend that. It is down to that, finding the right school and the school that fits the child that will support them in that area, I think. And I think that leads us into an interesting question we got from, let's just find it, it's from Peter, because they're talking about you know, educational psychologists in Portugal and those types of things. His question is kind of, how would international schools in Portugal compare with, say, the UK or the US?
Who are you asking?
Tom, could you take that one?
In terms of the support that's in place, in terms of the feel, the quality. I mean, I was a principal in England, and, you know, went through lots of inspections, and you know, I think they've brought me here to hopefully maintain that quality, and so we can compare. I think there are ways to be in. There are a couple of groups that you can use to come and inspect international schools along the same kind of rigid, quite high criteria that the independent schools in the UK will undergo. So that's quite a good way of benchmarking. But I would be horrified if anyone suggested, or within my staff, or any that we weren't running a school at the same level of quality as the schools I've worked in before. I've got an amazing staff here, and the processes are brilliant, and I absolutely back them. I've not come here for an easy life. I've come here to run an amazing school but at least I'm only 15 minutes from the beach and I'm not commuting for an hour. So that's the easy life part. But actually, in terms of the education, they're still kids and they still deserve an amazing quality of schooling, and that's what we're working towards. So I would say hopefully as good, if not better. Controversial.
Abigail, anything to add?
Yeah, I can agree more, Tom. I've also led schools in the UK, and we work. I think partly people like Tom and I have been brought here to make sure that we are bringing all the best that a British school offers. I've brought the house system into ours. We've got competitions and rewards and recognition and student voice. We all work incredibly hard here. It's a vocation. We have a sort of a kind of moral duty to make sure it's the very best school. I think in a way it is better because our kids are they're growing up around so many different nationalities. They're learning to be global citizens. And one of the things I'm so proud of our kids is that they go off to universities all around the world. They're confident, they're capable, they can make great choices, and they're independent, and they really see themselves as global citizens. So I think it's a fabulous upbringing for your children. I really do. I couldn't think of it. I was only kind of sad that my kids were all grown up and I wasn't able to bring them through a system like St. Peter's and an international school. So for me, I think it's something to watch out for, to make sure that that you are choosing a school that has those robust systems in place, and something to look at. Obviously, exam results aren't everything, but I do think it's a benchmark to look at, are students achieving what they need to go on to to their next choices, no matter what their next choices are. That's a bit of a benchmark as well. Are they able to achieve and go on and study what they want to study? And we want our kids to have choices at the end, don't we? No matter what they decide, whether they decide to study art in Florence, or whether they decide to do business in Holland, or whether they decide that they want to go to UCL and study physics. You want to send your children to a school that brings out the best in every student and gives them opportunities and doesn't kind of close down opportunities. So I think international schools are fantastic places to bring up kids.
It's also quite easy with the state of the UK at the moment. Sometimes I'm systematically stealing teachers from my previous schools at the moment. So Portugal is a very easy sell, as for all the people here that are listening. There are lots of teachers over in the UK that are desperate to come and relocate out here. So it's quite easy.
Couldn't agree more. I often have 200 applicants for every teaching post.
We don't even advertise. I just keep getting sent CVs. It's amazing. So we can keep the quality because teachers are wanting to come here, and I think that should be reassuring too.
So I think that's a very interesting point. Christine, do you have anything that you'd like to add to kind of those remarks?
I think that's been pretty much summed up from both Tom and Abby here in that regard. So thank you for sharing.
Okay, well, I think we're kind of coming to the end. There's a couple of detailed questions in the chat which we will get back to you on. One of our panel will get back to you, or one of the Portugal Pathways team with some answers on those. But I think if we wrap up now, and I just say thank you so much to Abigail, Tom, and Christine, who've done a fabulous job, I think, of giving everybody a feel for what it's like educating your children in Portugal. If you're bringing children to Portugal, there's probably not a bigger decision you'll make than what school they go to. And take a look at the schools that Abigail and Tom represent, because I think they've represented themselves remarkably well today. I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. And relocating is a journey, and choosing the right school for your children is central to building a happy and secure life in Portugal. And if there's any help or support you want in evaluating schools, planning your move, or connecting with relocation and wealth specialists, there should be a link now in the chat to book a private consultation. And at Portugal Pathways, we'd be delighted to help. But have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all at the next seminar. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon. But thank you to my panelists, thank you to you, and I hope you all have a very good evening.
Thanks.